A U.S. driver recently traveled to Africa to test something the world has been waiting for: a self-charging electric vehicle that doesn't rely on traditional charging stations. At first, he couldn't believe the idea itself. An EV that never needed to be plugged in sounded like pure science fiction, but as soon as he got behind the wheel, his doubts began to fade. The sleek design, futuristic dashboard, and whisper-quiet start gave him a sense that he was about to experience something groundbreaking. The road trip began on dusty African highways, where traditional EVs would have struggled due to limited charging infrastructure. Yet this car kept going mile after mile, without the driver stopping even once to refuel or recharge. The secret lay in the car's advanced energy regeneration system, which captured power from motion, heat, and even the surrounding environment. Locals gathered around in amazement as the car sped by, curious about how it was running with no fuel stations or charging cables in sight. As the driver pushed the vehicle harder, climbing steep hills and navigating long stretches of rough terrain, the car still showed a full battery. This wasn't just innovation, it was a revolution. The moment that shocked him most was when he realized the car was actually producing more power than it consumed, storing extra energy for future use. Engineers had long called such a concept impossible, but here it was, working flawlessly on African soil. By the end of his test, the U.S. driver admitted that this invention could rewrite the future of transportation. If adopted worldwide, it could eliminate dependence on fossil fuels, reduce carbon emissions, and bring affordable mobility to even the most remote regions. The story spread quickly, leaving audiences stunned that the breakthrough came not from Silicon Valley or Europe, but from Africa. It was proof that the next era of electric vehicles had already begun, and the world would never look at cars the same way again. As word spread about the U.S. driver's test, people across the globe began questioning everything they thought they knew about electric vehicles. For years, EV owners had accepted the limits of battery life, the stress of planning trips around charging stations, and the high cost of maintenance. Yet this single test run in Africa challenged all of that. Videos surfaced online showing the driver's astonishment as the car's dashboard displayed a steady charge despite hours of non-stop driving. Viewers flooded the internet with comments, calling it a miracle of engineering and a historic breakthrough that could outshine even Tesla's boldest innovations. The driver described the experience as surreal. Each time he expected the battery to drain, the opposite happened. The gauge either stayed level or crept higher. He pushed the vehicle to extremes, racing through hot deserts, over rugged mountains, and along endless highways. Normally, such conditions would sap an EV's range in record time, but this car refused to quit. It seemed to thrive the longer it ran, as if motion itself was fueling its endless journey. Soon, scientists and engineers demanded to see the technology behind it. Some skeptics insisted it must be a publicity stunt or an illusion, but the raw footage of the test drive silenced many critics. Experts began dissecting the regenerative system, marveling at how it combines solar absorption, kinetic motion recovery, and thermal energy conversion in ways no manufacturer had ever achieved. The driver explained that he felt like he was part of history in the making, as though he had just glimpsed the future of humanity's relationship with energy. The most shocking moment came when he left the car parked overnight without plugging it into anything. By morning, instead of losing charge like every other EV, the car had gained power. It was as if the vehicle had a heartbeat of its own, quietly pulling energy from the environment while the world slept. The driver admitted he had never seen anything like it, confessing that the experience felt like driving the future itself. Global media outlets rushed to cover the story, calling Africa the new frontier of automotive innovation. The world had long underestimated the continent's potential, but this invention demanded attention. For the U.S. driver, the journey was more than just a test, it was a revelation. He returned home with one message that echoed worldwide: the age of charging stations may soon be over, and Africa may have just sparked the revolution that will change transportation forever. The driver's return to the United States created a storm unlike anything he had anticipated. Within days of sharing his story, major news outlets, tech blogs, and car enthusiasts were debating what this breakthrough could mean. Some dismissed it as exaggerated hype, while others believed it was the missing piece in humanity's quest for clean, limitless transportation. His footage of the journey quickly went viral, racking up millions of views, and people began calling the car the perpetual motion EV, even though scientists avoided that term. Behind the scenes, auto industry giants scrambled to learn more. Executives from established car companies quietly reached out to the African engineers, hoping to buy patents, strike partnerships, or simply shut the project down before it disrupted their billion-dollar markets. The U.S. driver found himself in the middle of a storm of attention, interviewed on talk shows, invited to conferences, and even contacted by investors who wanted him to confirm every detail of the vehicle's performance. Each time he recounted the story, he admitted that even he still struggled to believe what he had witnessed, a car that seemed alive, drawing power from the world around it. Meanwhile, governments began to take notice. Environmental groups hailed the technology as a potential weapon against climate change. Nations dependent on oil exports worried about the economic fallout if this invention reached global markets. The driver started receiving warnings that such technology could be too disruptive, that powerful interests might try to bury it. Yet, instead of silencing him, the controversy only fueled his determination to speak louder. He declared in one interview that this isn't just about cars, it's about freedom, independence, and a new chapter for humanity. What shocked audiences even more was the backstory of the invention. The car wasn't developed in a billion-dollar lab or by a multinational corporation. It came from a small group of African innovators who had been working quietly, determined to solve the problem of unreliable infrastructure in their communities. Without access to widespread charging networks, they were forced to think differently, and their solution turned out to be something the rest of the world had never achieved. The driver emphasized this in his talks, saying that the most revolutionary ideas often come from places overlooked by the mainstream. As curiosity grew, whispers of secrecy also spread. Some claimed the car was already being targeted by corporations who feared losing their grip on the automotive market. Others speculated that military organizations were watching closely, recognizing the potential of self-sustaining energy systems. Through it all, the driver kept repeating one unforgettable message: "I've driven the future, and it doesn't need a charging station." The story began to take on a life of its own. What had started as a single test drive by a curious U.S. driver was now being dissected by millions around the world. Late-night shows made jokes about oil companies panicking. Tech forums buzzed with theories about how the car really worked. Was it purely solar-based? Did it harness motion in ways physics textbooks hadn't fully explained? Or had Africa quietly cracked a code the rest of the world had failed to unlock for decades? The mystery only added fuel to the fire. The driver himself felt both amazed and uneasy. Each day brought new requests for interviews, but also strange encounters. Anonymous emails warned him to stop talking before it's too late. He noticed unfamiliar cars parked near his home, and once, a package with no return address arrived at his doorstep containing only a note: "The world isn't ready for this." Instead of scaring him into silence, it made him realize how powerful the truth he carried really was. Meanwhile, the African inventors at the heart of the project faced mounting pressure. Some corporations tried offering them astronomical sums of money to sell the rights. Others allegedly threatened them with lawsuits, claiming the design violated international patents. Yet the inventors refused to back down. They insisted their creation was meant to free people from dependence on fuel, on foreign energy markets, even on governments that profited from scarcity. The U.S. driver stood firmly by their side, vowing to use his platform to ensure the world couldn't ignore their work. As more tests were conducted and additional footage surfaced online, the car's abilities proved undeniable. It could run across entire countries without refueling, survive extreme weather, and even power small devices when parked. At one demonstration, the vehicle supplied enough electricity to light up a rural village for an entire night. That moment went viral too, sparking tears and cheers around the globe. People began to realize this was bigger than transportation. It was about energy independence, about changing lives in places where power outages were common and fuel was unaffordable. The shock wasn't just about the technology itself, it was about the timing. At a moment when the world was grappling with climate change, rising fuel prices, and strained power grids, this invention seemed like an answer dropped from the future. For the U.S. driver, every time he retold his story, he emphasized the same point: he hadn't just tested a car, he had witnessed the beginning of a revolution. And revolutions, as history shows, are never easy in the end. The journey of a U.S. driver testing Africa's self-charging EV became more than just a story about a car. It was the spark of a global conversation about innovation, independence, and the future of clean energy. What shocked him most was not only the car's ability to run endlessly without a charging station, but also the determination of its creators to share it with the world despite enormous pressure. The experience proved that true breakthroughs don't always come from billion-dollar corporations or high-tech labs. Sometimes, they rise from places the world least expects. The conclusion was clear: this wasn't just the test of a vehicle, it was the test of an idea powerful enough to challenge industries, inspire nations, and redefine what transportation could be. For the driver, the message was simple yet unforgettable: the future of mobility is here, and it started in Africa.